before mattresses, metal springs, and fluffy pillows existed. Sleep was a very different kind of experience, one shaped by survival, tradition, and whatever nature happened to provide. Long before the world quieted down under electric lights, people drifted to sleep following the rhythm of darkness itself. Night began with the soft crackle of fires, the scent of smoke settling into hair and clothes, and the slow cooling of the air as stars crept across the sky. Most people didn't lie down on anything soft. A bed could be nothing more than a wooden platform covered with straw, leaves, or dried reeds. The straw wasn't always comfortable. It scratched, poked, and needed constant replacing, but it insulated well and kept the cold from creeping up through the floor. In some regions, softer grasses were layered and packed tightly, turning bedding into a seasonal project every spring and autumn. Pillows weren't fluffy either. In many ancient cultures, they were carved from wood, stone, or ceramic shaped, just enough to cradle the neck and keep insects from crawling into ears during the night. The support was surprisingly effective, even if it wasn't cozy by modern standards. In cold climates, people slept bundled with furs that still carried the earthy scent of the animals they came from. In warmer regions, woven mats cooled the body and allowed air to pass beneath the sleeper. Nighttime was also a shared moment. Families slept close together, often in the same room, not just for warmth but for safety. The sounds of breathing and shifting bodies formed the nightly soundtrack. Houses had no insulation, so people could hear the wind pushing against wooden walls, animals scurrying outside, and sometimes distant voices carrying through the dark. And sleep usually came in two parts. People drifted into their first sleep, woke naturally around midnight, tended fires, prayed, talked quietly, or stepped outside to check animals. Then came the second sleep, a concept so normal that it appeared naturally in old writings, yet is almost forgotten today. In a world lit only by fire and the moon, sleep wasn't rushed. It followed a slow, steady pattern shaped by seasons, temperature, and communal life. In that quieter world, bedtime wasn't just rest, it was a nightly ritual that blended survival, culture, and the ancient human relationship with darkness. Before the invention of blankets as we know them, warmth at night came from whatever people could gather, trade, or craft by hand. In many places, the first layer beneath a sleeper wasn't even padding, it was the fire itself. Hearths stayed glowing through most of the night, and families positioned their sleeping spots so the heat would reach them without risking sparks. The closer you were to the fire, the higher your status, or the younger your bones. Elders and children often slept nearest to the embers, soaking up every bit of warmth. As cultures developed, so did nighttime comfort. In northern regions, people stitched animal hides and furs together, creating thick, heavy coverings that could weigh as much as a modern weighted blanket. These weren't merely comfort items, they were survival tools. A single wolf pelt could shield someone from freezing winds, its warmth more valuable than gold in midwinter. Families took great care of these furs, airing them out during the day and guarding them from moisture, because one wet hide could mean a miserable, shivering night. In warmer climates, bedding looked entirely different. Woven blankets from plant fibers such as flax, palm, or hemp were lightweight and breathable. Though rougher than cotton, they kept insects away and dried quickly in humid weather. Some communities layered leaves or grasses between two thin sheets to create simple quilts, replacing the filling as it broke down over time. People didn't sleep alone as often as we do today. Shared blankets were common, especially among poorer families. Everyone contributed body heat, turning the bedding into a collective heat source. The nighttime shuffling of limbs, whispered conversations, and occasional complaints about someone hogging the fur were all part of the unspoken rhythm of communal sleep. Even travelers relied on shared warmth, sleeping side by side in inns or barns, each person clutching their own travel roll of straw and cloth. Despite the roughness of these materials, they were cared for with surprising precision. Blankets were beaten clean in the sunlight, fumigated with smoke to drive out insects, and patched so many times that some were more repair thread than original fabric. To sleep was to maintain a connection with nature, its warmth, its creatures, and its unpredictable temperament. Every night was a negotiation between the cold, the materials people crafted, and the ingenuity that kept them alive until morning. Before pillows were soft, fluffy, and neatly shaped, they were often firm, heavy, and surprisingly symbolic. In many early societies, a pillow wasn't meant for comfort. At all, its main purpose was to keep insects, dirt, and creeping creatures away from a sleeper's mouth and nose. Ancient Egyptians used carved wooden or alabaster headrests, curved slightly at the top to cradle the neck rather than the head. These stands kept the head elevated so air could pass around it, cooling the body and preventing lice from icily traveling onto the scalp. Comfort, in their view, wasn't softness. It was protection and practicality. Across Asia, especially in China and Japan, ceramic and wooden pillows became common. Some were beautifully decorated with painted patterns or carved designs, sometimes believed to influence dreams or guard the sleeper from bad spirits. A ceramic pillow might hold coolness on a summer night, becoming almost refreshing despite its hardness. There are records of people placing small herbs inside hollow wooden pillows so the scent would soothe them to sleep, an early, rigid version of aromatherapy. In medieval Europe, pillows took on a completely different meaning. For a long time, only wealthy people used them. Poorer families either made do with bundled cloth or went without pillows entirely. Knights, surprisingly, were discouraged from using soft pillows because they were considered a luxury that might weaken the body. Strength, discipline, and endurance were values even in sleep. Meanwhile, noble families stuffed pillows with feathers, moss, or wool materials that softened with age and use. A well-worn pillow became a treasured object, sometimes passed down through generations. Nomadic cultures had their own practical designs. Some used saddlebags as pillows, stuffing them with grass or spare clothing during the night. Others used rolled-up animal skins that doubled as daytime gear. The pillow was never just a sleeping tool. It was part of daily survival, travel, and preparation. What mattered most was portability and durability. Even though these early pillows might seem strange or uncomfortable by modern standards, they shaped the way people slept for centuries. Every design reflected a culture's environment, beliefs, and resources. Some cultures valued elevation for spiritual reasons, some for hygiene, and others simply for physical strength. And all of them navigated sleep with whatever materials the natural world offered, turning simple objects into symbols of rest, safety, and identity. By the time societies developed more structured homes and sleeping spaces, the bed itself began to evolve into something more recognizable. But even then, the materials people slept on varied wildly depending on geography and wealth. In many medieval homes, the bed was basically a large wooden frame filled with ropes, woven into a grid. These ropes sagged over time, so people tightened them regularly, a small task that eventually gave rise to the phrase, "sleep tight." On top of those ropes, most families layered straw mattresses, which were affordable but far from luxurious. Straw gave off a warm, earthy smell and had to be fluffed or replaced often because it attracted insects and absorbed moisture. Wealthier families replaced straw with feathers or soft wool, making a bed much lighter and far more comfortable. Still, every mattress was handmade, and no two ever felt the same. In colder climates, people piled heavy blankets, quilts, and sometimes animal furs on top of themselves. The weight wasn't just comforting, it was insulating. Before central heating existed, the night could be a real battle against the cold. Families often slept together, especially children, to share warmth. This wasn't just affectionate, it was survival. In some parts of the world, people slept on raised platforms built out of clay or stone, warmed by fire from below. These structures stored heat long after flames went out, turning the bed into a gentle, steady source of warmth through the night. A heated sleeping platform like this could make winter nights significantly easier to endure. Even the smallest details of sleep, how high someone slept, what materials surrounded them, or how many layers they used, were shaped by climate and tradition. For many people, comfort wasn't defined by softness but by warmth, safety, and familiarity. Beds became a reflection of a family's craftsmanship, resourcefulness, and the environment they lived in. Over time, these simple platforms, stuffed sacks, woven ropes, and warm furs slowly shaped the idea of rest into something universal, yet endlessly varied across different worlds. As sleeping spaces became more defined, so did nighttime routines. People didn't simply fall into bed. The process of preparing for sleep was often a ritual shaped by culture, superstition, and practicality. In many households, especially in rural villages, the day ended with the careful extinguishing of lamps and hearth fires. This wasn't just to save fuel. Open flames were dangerous, and a single spark could consume an entire wooden home. So families dimmed the night slowly, allowing their eyes to adjust as shadows replaced the last traces of daylight. Before lying down, mattresses were shaken or beaten to drive out insects and redistribute the filling. This was especially important for straw or hay beds, which flattened easily and could harbor small creatures. Feathers, though softer, needed fluffing too so they wouldn't clump. Some families even sprinkled herbs, lavender, rosemary, or mint, beneath the bedding. They believed the scents could ward off pests or evil spirits, but the pleasant fragrance also genuinely made sleep easier. Sleepwear was far from modern pajamas. Many people simply slept in the clothes they wore indoors, because fabric was valuable and washing was laborious. In colder climates, people layered up, slipping into woolen nightcaps designed to trap heat that would otherwise escape from the head. These caps became so iconic that they appear in old illustrations of nearly everyone sleeping. Light, too, influenced sleep in surprising ways. With no artificial brightness beyond fire or the moon, nighttime felt profoundly quiet and deep. People often experienced segmented sleep, sleeping a few hours, waking briefly in the middle of the night, then drifting off again. During that quiet interval, some prayed, some stoked the fire, and others simply reflected. It was a rhythm as natural as breathing, shaped by darkness itself. For families who lived close together, sleep carried a sense of community. Children curled near parents, siblings shared straw pallets, and everyone's breathing blended into a soft, steady chorus. Privacy was rare. Comfort was shared. These simple rituals, fluffing, bedding, dimming the fire, pulling on warm layers helped people transition into a night of rest, shaped as much by tradition as by necessity. Nighttime in the past was not only darker, but also noisier in ways people today might not expect. The world outside the walls, whether a medieval village, a Roman insula, or a rural cottage, buzzed with life after sundown. Dogs barked at distant footsteps, roosters crowed unpredictably, and neighbors often lived so close that every creak in the next room carried like a whisper. Yet people adapted, developing a kind of selective hearing that allowed them to drift off despite the background chorus. Inside the home, warmth played the role of a nightly guardian. In many places, winters were harsh enough that sleeping near a dying fire was essential. Some families kept terracotta bed warmers filled with glowing coals and slid them beneath blankets to take the edge off the cold. Others relied on thick curtains placed around the bed itself, not for decoration, but to trap precious heat. These canopy-like enclosures acted almost like small heated rooms within a room, allowing the sleeper's breath to warm the enclosed space by morning. Sleep companions also influenced the experience. In farms and cabins, pets sometimes curled near the foot of the bed because their body heat was useful. In some periods, it wasn't unusual to share a mattress with guests or even strangers when traveling, since inns had limited space and considered shared sleeping arrangements perfectly normal. The concept of personal space simply hadn't evolved into what it is today. Despite these conditions, people valued rest deeply. They often believed dreams carried messages from ancestors, gods, or omens for the future. A strange dream might be discussed over breakfast as seriously as one might discuss the weather, and because nighttime stillness felt almost sacred, people moved slowly and deliberately, careful not to disturb the fragile peace of a sleeping household. As the fire dimmed and the cold crept close, people tucked themselves under layers of wool, straw-stuffed quilts, or animal pelts. Sleep wasn't merely rest, it was a nightly crossing into another world, guided by instinct, tradition, and the soft sounds of a home settling into silence. As the night deepened, sleep itself became a shared experience shaped by the environment and beliefs of the time. People drifted into slumber, knowing that the darkness outside their walls was far more complete than anything modern eyes have seen. Without street lamps or glowing city skies, the world beyond the window was a vast ink-black expanse. This deep darkness had a profound impact on how people slept. It encouraged longer rest, vivid dreams, and a stronger attachment to the quiet safety of the home. In many communities, the silence of night was broken only by the subtle movements of nature. The hooting of owls, the rustling of rodents in granaries, or the distant howl of wolves served as reminders that humans lived much closer to the natural world. For those in medieval Europe or ancient Asia, simply hearing the wrong sound at the wrong hour could be unsettling. It was no surprise that many cultures believed nighttime spirits roamed freely after sundown. To protect themselves, households placed objects near the bed, iron tools, carved charms, or written prayers to keep unwanted forces at bay. The beds themselves offered more than comfort. They acted as sanctuaries. Families often positioned beds strategically, away from doors or windows, believing this reduced vulnerability. In some traditions, people even aligned their heads toward certain directions for good luck or health. These choices weren't random. They were a blend of spiritual belief and practical wisdom. Nighttime also carried an element of vulnerability. With no instant communication or bright lighting, emergencies were difficult to detect and even harder to respond to. If a child woke sick, a midwife or healer might have to be summoned in near darkness. If someone heard a suspicious noise, they approached cautiously with only a candle or torch to guide them. The fragility of these moments made safety feel precious and rest feel sacred. But once everyone settled, wrapped in wool, surrounded by soft breaths, protected by charms and tradition, night became peaceful. The flicker of the last embers glowed faintly across the room, casting slow-moving shadows on wooden walls. This was the moment when people, as midnight passed and the household slept, the world of dreams became just as important as the waking world. People from earlier centuries didn't treat dreams as random fragments. They often believed they held meaning, warnings, or even guidance. In medieval Europe, a vivid dream might be interpreted by a priest or healer, while in ancient societies, dream interpretation could influence daily decisions, travel plans, or marriage arrangements. People wrote their dreams into diaries, whispered them to loved ones in the dawn light, or pondered them during moments of quiet work. But dreams were influenced by the physical reality of sleep as well. Beds filled with straw could shift and crunch beneath the sleeper, adding texture to night visions. The flickering of the final ember in the fireplace might cast moving patterns that seeped into dreams as wandering shadows. Even the cold of winter nights, pressing gently against the skin, could slip into the imagination, transforming into dream snow or silent forests. Nighttime also brought a natural pause to the chaos of daily life. Cities that were loud and crowded during the day fell eerily quiet after dark. Market stalls were shuttered, workshops silenced, and livestock settled. In rural areas, the quiet was even deeper. Distant rivers murmured, branches swayed softly, and the occasional call of an animal echoed across fields. This soundscape created a unique environment for sleep, one that encouraged reflection and deep rest. And yet, people were never entirely alone at night. In households of 5, 10, or even more, the sound of breathing filled the space. A child shifting, a parent turning, a dog settling at the foot of the bed. These familiar noises formed a comforting rhythm. Communities were tightly knit, and sleep was often experienced as a shared journey through the quiet hours. The nights were longer, too, especially in winter, giving people time not just to rest, but to think. Many woke naturally around the middle of the night, a phenomenon called first sleep and second sleep. During this peaceful interlude, some whispered small prayers, checked on the fire, or pondered their dreams. It was a time of gentle solitude, a quiet pause between two chapters of the night, where the world felt still and time itself seemed to slow. As the night edged toward the early hours, the temperature often dropped sharply, especially in stone-built homes or wooden cottages with thin walls. People relied heavily on their bedding to keep warm. Thick wool blankets, patched quilts, or animal pelts were essential, but they also served a deeper purpose. They were symbols of care, family labor, and tradition. A well-made quilt might take months to complete, stitched slowly by candlelight, each piece carrying a memory from an older garment or a special occasion. To sleep beneath it was to be wrapped in a story. Some homes kept small embers glowing in the hearth through the night, covered carefully with ash to prevent oxygen from fueling a flame. This simple practice meant the fire could be revived in the morning without starting from scratch, a small but meaningful convenience, especially in winter. The faint warmth from these covered embers helped maintain a more comfortable sleeping environment, and their soft red glow provided just enough light to reveal shapes without breaking the darkness. Night guards, both human and animal, played their roles too. In rural villages, dogs were attuned to the slightest changes outside, their ears twitching at distant footsteps or rustling bushes. In towns, night watchmen wandered the streets carrying lanterns and rattles, calling out the hour or warning the community of danger. Their presence was a reminder that even in rest, life continued beyond the home's walls. Within the household, bodies shifted naturally through the night. Someone might rise quietly to stoke the fire, soothe a crying child, or step outside briefly, guided only by moonlight. Because homes were small, even a single movement could stir others, yet no one complained. This was normal. Sleep was flexible, communal, and deeply tied to the rhythms of nature. In the deepest part of night, the world felt suspended. Air grew still, dreams thickened, and the boundary between imagination and reality softened. For people of earlier eras, this time carried a sense of magic, not the fantastical kind, but a quiet, intimate magic born from stillness, warmth, and the collective breath of a household at rest. As dawn approached, sleep began to lighten naturally. Before alarm clocks existed, people woke to a mix of subtle cues: the soft call of birds, the distant shifting of livestock, the faint brightening of the horizon, or simply the body's internal rhythm shaped by centuries of habit. Early morning light slipped through cracks in shutters or thin fabric curtains, stretching across wooden floors and touching sleeping faces with a gentle glow. Often, the first person awake was auntie, someone eager to start the day. It was the person responsible for rekindling the fire. They would shuffle quietly toward the hearth, hair still messy from sleep, breath visible in the chilly air. Lifting the ash that covered last night's embers, they coaxed the faintest spark back into a living flame. The warmth spread slowly, waking the room the same way dawn woke the world outside. As others stirred, the transition from sleep to day was gradual. Children murmured dreams aloud before opening their eyes. Adults stretched stiff muscles, their bodies shaped by beds far firmer and often lumpier than anything considered comfortable today. Conversations were soft at first, as though people feared breaking the delicate peace that lingered from the night. Morning routines reflected the values and realities of the time. People prayed, fed animals, swept floors, or prepared simple breakfasts like porridge or bread. The bedding was shaken out and hung near the hearth to dry, especially after cold nights, when moisture clung to everything. If mattresses were stuffed with straw or feathers, they were fluffed and redistributed to restore shape, a daily reminder that comfort required constant effort. Despite the challenges and simplicity of their world, people found small joys in the start of day: the warmth of a rekindled fire, the familiar scent of wood smoke, the comfort of family voices filling the room again, and above all, the quiet satisfaction of having passed another night safely, surrounded by the small rituals and humble comforts that defined their sleep. For people before modern beds, rest was not a luxury. It was a nightly negotiation with nature, tradition, and community. Yet somehow, in the softness of dawn, it felt enough.